Hello YouTube, welcome back to the Micah's Lawn Maintenance YouTube channel. It's been a minute since I posted, but I wanted to today give you a tutorial on how to adjust the valves on your Honda HRN216. Let's get into it. So real quick, before we get into the actual maintenance, I want to show you what it's actually doing that makes me believe the valves need readjusted. So first of all, when you go to pull this cord, there's very little resistance anywhere. So that's either a compression issue or a valves issue. And I'm just gonna start it up real quick just to let you guys hear what it sounds like when it runs. And it doesn't seem too bad, but it vibrates a lot and it's down on power, so I just want to go ahead and double check it. Alright, now your very first job is to get this plastic cover off. It's not super necessary, but it's going to make our job a lot easier, so let's get that done. First, we need to remove this little screw right here. Zoom in so you guys can see that. Right there, we need to remove that little screw. It's just a Phillips, nothing special. Just want to pop that out real quick. Make sure you don't lose this screw. It's pretty small, but it's important. And then pop out this little C-U clamp here, whatever you want to call it. Don't lose that either. So the next thing you want to do is you want to pop up these tabs. So right here, if you can see the indentations in the plastic, this is where your tabs are going to be. So if you look right under here, you'll see some red tabs. And what you want to do is you want to push the cover a little bit down, pull those tabs all the way towards you, and then push up on it. Might give you a little bit of difficulty, but it should come. I try to do it one side at a time. It seems to go a little easier. So now we have this side unclipped. Let's go do the other side. So now we're on this side, and it's going to be the exact same procedure. You have two indentations, one here, one here. Those are both going to indicate your tabs. What you want to do, pull those towards you. Actually do one at a time, that'll be a lot easier. And just pop the cover up, then slide it back. We can just let it hang here for now. And now we'll get on to the fun part. All right, your next step is just going to be getting this mower up to where you can work at it. I'm going to set it back like this and set it on a cinder block so that we can easily look at the valves and the oil isn't pooling in them while we're trying to work on it. Okay, so now that we're up here at the valves, the first thing you want to make sure is you need to have this spark plug unplugged just for extra safety. Not too hard, just tuck it to the side there. Next, what you want to do is you want to take this spark plug out. It is a 3/16 socket. And there we go. That looks a bit sooty for my liking, but it's fine. All right, next thing you want to do is you want to grab yourself a socket with a 10mm and just go ahead and loosen up these valve cover bolts. They'll be a bit tight from the Loctite that's put on them from the factory. Next, to actually take this valve cover off, you're going to want a nice long flathead screwdriver just to get some leverage up in there. It's going to fight you a bit. There we go. Perfect, there's not too much oil left in there. You see we drained that out really well. Next you want to make sure your piston is sitting at top dead center, which mine is. This valve here to the left, that's going to be your intake, and this valve here is going to be your exhaust. Next up is to actually check the valve clearance. For that we're going to be using this feeler gauge here. On Honda's website they say 0.01 plus or minus 0.002 for both exhaust and intake. So we're going to check that real quick. What you're going to want to do is stick it just behind this here, and that is way too tight. Way too tight. I can't get it in there. And then the exhaust is pretty close, but we're still going to adjust that anyway. Alright, now to adjust these, what you want to do is you want to grab an 8mm socket here. You want to, real quick, pop these nuts loose. That one was pretty loose. That one was a lot tighter. You just want to pop these a little loose. They don't need to be super loose. And then what you can do here is, if you see the end of these have little notches that you can spin, and that spins this little assembly here in and out of the shaft independent of the nut. So we want 10 thousandths, and that right there gave us a little more wiggle room. So I'm going to tighten this back down onto the onto the 10 thousandths here. Again, doesn't have to be super duper tight, just you want just enough that it can go through without being stopped. So right there I made it just a little bit too tight maybe, so I'm gonna go ahead and back this nut off, unscrew this maybe just a tiny bit, put that nut back in, and that's about good right there. Just gonna tighten this about a quarter turn, double check that, and that's about perfect. That's about how much resistance you want in your valves there. So next up we are going to do the other side here. Again, make sure this nut is backed off to give you room to work. So that's much better. We have a little bit of resistance. We have about the same motion in both of these. So that's your valves all adjusted. Next, you want to just scrape off the gasket material, which I'll do off camera. You can use a razor blade for that. Next, we just need to get our valve cover reassembled. So pop your liquid gasket or real gasket. I would suggest you use a real gasket, but this liquid stuff has worked just fine for me, so I'm going to use it. I probably went a little too heavy with it, but it is what it is. It's a little messy. It doesn't need to be perfect. So now just pop this right back on. Oh, first make sure that guy's in. That seems important. Oh yeah, that's going on a little bit better. So press that on, and then go ahead and reattach your 4 screws. It's okay if the gasket material, if you are using liquid gasket, it's okay for it to bleed out just a little bit. That's normal. There we go, that's one. Just get them started in the threads so that you have the cover all lined up nicely. Now we have that one started. Three. Now we'll get all of these bolts to the tightness they need to be. They don't need to be super tight. Just make sure they're nice and snug. Right there is about where it needs to be. So that's the valves all done. Let's get this reassembled. Just pop your spark plug in real quick. Good idea to hand tighten your spark plug until the very end, and at that point just use spark plug socket to real quick tighten it down. Oh, I'm loosening it. Right there. It doesn't need to be overly tight. Next, we're gonna take this off of our cinder block here. Just go ahead and pop it right back down on the ground. You're going to now just go ahead and pop this cover back on. It goes on a lot easier than it came off. Trust me. Just want to push it down until you hear little snaps in all four corners. And then double check by just pressing it. So that's all nice and in there. Lastly, you need to make sure that you reinstall this little C-clamp and the little bolt right where this tab is up here. So if you see, this bolt has a little curved end to it with a little indent and then a flat side. That flat side is going to be facing out. Just pops right up in there. And then you can put your little screw in. There it is. So now just go ahead, screw that sucker back in. Don't do that too tight, you don't want to strip it. Pop your gas cap back on. And you're all done. Now, just because we're done doesn't mean we should start this right away. The specific gasket maker I used recommended a 24-hour wait period before you start it again, just so it has time to solidify so the oil does not escape. If you use a regular gasket, you don't even have to wait, I don't know. But with this gasket maker, you do have to wait. And that's going to be the same for pretty much all gasket makers. They might have a different waiting period. They might have a faster set time, but you are going to have to wait for it.